Britain can no longer be described as a Christian country. This is according to 3/4 of the Church of England's priests, who, according to a landmark survey, who believe this is the case. The most wide-ranging poll carried out among frontline Anglican clergy and the first survey of Church of England clerics conducted in almost a decade has found a strong desire among rank-and-file priests for significant changes in church doctrine on issues such as sex, sexuality, marriage and the role of women, to bring it into greater line with public opinion. A majority of priests want the church to start conducting same-sex weddings and drop its opposition to premarital and gay sex, in results described as absolutely huge by campaigners. There's a lot to get into on this. Let's speak with Stephen Evans from the National Secular Society and the Reverend George Pitcher, Church of England priest, former advisor to the Archbishop of Canterbury. Reverend Pitcher, good afternoon, firstly.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. Were you shocked by this? I mean, this is a huge amount of the Church of England that are looking for significant change here, because apparently Christianity is no longer really something that is reflected in Britain.
Well, I'm always encouraged by people that are looking for change, but what slightly depresses me is the kind of accompanying commentary that comes out of these statistics. The research doesn't really tell us anything that's wholly new. We've had the census recently that shows the decline in church attending numbers and so on. I think the element that I find most depressing about it all really is this idea that the clergy are increasingly feeling that they should be led by demand, by like a kind of supermarket. You know, the customers want the following.
Yes.
So that's what we should supply to meet that demand. I'm not really interested in popularity or focus groups. I'm interested in truth. And I think most of my sentient Christian colleagues would agree with that. That doesn't mean that I'm some sort of white-knuckled reactionary who thinks that people I don't agree with should be horsewhipped or anything. What I do think, however, is that we should be looking at the world through the prism of our faith, not at our faith through the prism of the world.
Got it. So your contention really is that, I mean, you know, it's by definition, it's just the word of God. It's therefore it's immovable. You can't morph it or reinterpret it to suit contemporary opinion. Is that broadly what you're saying?
I'm all in for reinterpretation, because otherwise I think you've got a set. You end up with a set of rules that are literally carved in stone in the Ten Commandments, and that's it. You know, I do think that we have to see it in the context of the world in which we live in, but I think we need to look at what the gospel imperatives speak about.
So when you hear phrases like "Britain is no longer a Christian country," what do you think what does that mean to you? That statement?
Well, I'm comfortable with that. I'm more than comfortable with that. I think I'd celebrate that. I think we're highly multicultural. We're very diverse. We're welcoming to all sorts of very different people. We're also not the kind of established church in the old social consciousness way. We're not the Conservative Party at prayer, as was once said. You know, it used to be ticking a kind of respectable and conformist box to go to church. I think people now go to church because they want to, and I think that's to be celebrated.
Stephen Evans from the National Secular Society. I mean, this is obviously an area that I would imagine when you see that headline, Britain is no longer a Christian country, it was, tell us something we didn't know sort of territory. Would that be fair?
I think so. I mean, Christianity has been in decline for the best part of a century in this country now. So whether it's measured by belief, by affiliation or church attendance, Christianity, as I say, has been in decline for decades. Fewer than 1% of the population are in church on any given Sunday at the moment. So I think the Anglican clergy here are just recognising the reality that we're no longer a Christian country, not in any meaningful sense anyway. Christianity remains, of course, one major influence that shapes our current way of life. But as George said, the UK today is a nation of many denominations and religions. Large sections of the population don't hold or practice religious beliefs. So what this really, for me, demonstrates is the need to really rethink religion's public and its political role, and the need to separate church and state.
How do we do that, Reverend Pitcher? It's quite difficult, isn't it? Because, you are a Christian, you're a man of faith, and you are, you hold senior positions along with your colleagues in the faith of Christianity. But so the last thing I would imagine you'd want to do, even you acknowledge the diverse nature of the UK, but you don't want to dilute your own faith, do you? You don't want to say, well, it's great that we don't have as many people turning up to church. You want as many as you can in there, surely.
Well, yes, but I think it's important, as you sort of suggest there, to concentrate on the faith in practice.
So quality, not quantity.
So rather than getting terribly obsessed with the church and the church's performance. That's a concern. I agree with that, and I agree with Steve in terms of the direction of travel. But I think we're probably best, and I think Steve touched on this at the end of what he had to say there. I think we're probably best when we're a thorn in the side of the state rather than part of the state, and so I think probably this establishment is a very active thing to discuss.
Is that I was going to say, just to put that point to Stephen, has that always been the national secular sort of prime concern, the interweaving position of the church within the state? It's seeing clergy in the House of Lords, a dominance, an influence, if you like. Is that central to areas that bother you as a person from the National Secular Society? Is that up there on the top of the list?
Yeah, these are key issues for secularists. What we want really is equality for all people, regardless of religion or belief, and we've never really had that in the United Kingdom. And the fact that we've got a privileged church, a state church, that the role of head of state is actually reserved for practice in Anglicans. A third of our schools are faith schools. We have 26 bishops sitting as of right in the House of Lords. They're gifted seats as of right. And with those seats, they can really influence the political process as well. So all these privileges, I think it is right that we look at these. The Church of England isn't going anywhere. It's going to survive just fine. In fact, it may even thrive if it is disestablished. But in terms of equality, I think it's really important now that everyone in this country is seen as equal citizens. And while you've got a privileged position for one particular denomination of one particular religion, I don't think that's possible. So I think that's where policymakers now really need to shift their attention to, and instead of looking in the other direction, recognise that the continuation of an established church with all the privileges that come from that is no longer sustainable.
Reverend Pitcher, what are Christian values to you? I mean, you said you embrace diversity of other faiths and belief systems. Well, I mean, there are some faiths or elements of some faiths that aren't. I mean, we talk about Christianity modernising and reflecting, perhaps new narratives or reinterpretations of old scriptures, etc. But I mean, there are many faiths that you could argue are way behind Christianity.
I'm not sure that I want to compare a league table of our faiths, because there are so many people within those faiths that believe and propagate different things, including, incidentally, Christianity. I think what I want to say with regard to us being a state church is that I hear what Steve's saying about our position being unduly privileged, though I'm not sure that privilege is as overstated as he makes it. But nevertheless, I think I think I'm slightly with Her Late Majesty the Queen, who gave a speech on one of her jubilees, and I'm afraid I can't remember the nature of the precious metal that went with it. I think it was golden, actually, in 2012, when she gave a speech where she said, it's not about a privileged state religion, it's about making all faiths and none safe for their observance in this country. And I think that's a good expression of the way in which Christianity has worked in this country, and I think it continues to do so. I think her point really was that an entirely secular society can, by intention or otherwise, and I don't aim this at Steve, can can move towards sweeping religious faith from the public sphere.
Well, I was on that. Yes, I was just going to ask, just a final point to you, Stephen, really, on the wider issue of a world without faith. Does faith, even if you don't subscribe to a particular one, there are clearly common factors in the major religions, not killing people, adultery, and all those kind of things. Do they not provide a template, a bit of a rudder that we would perhaps miss if it wasn't there?
No, I don't think the values that we really hold dear in this country, such as tolerance, justice, fairness, these sort of things, I don't think they're exclusively religious values. I think they're secular values too. And certainly at the National Secular Society, freedom of religion or belief is one of our key kind of, driving motivations. We want to support and defend that. So we're not looking for a nation without faith. In fact, we're not going to have a world without faith at all. It's going in the opposite direction at the moment. All we want is equality, really, for all people of all faiths and none. I think the way you achieve that is through secularism. Okay. And that's why we need this separation of church and state. It's really to get that sort of equality. So everyone has a say in the political process, but it's on a position of equality rather than privilege.
There it is. Thank you, guys. Stephen Evans from the National Secular Society and the Reverend George Pitcher, Church of England priest and former advisor to the Archbishop of Canterbury.